customers do we have?
53.
We. So, for those of you who are new to Galilee, there's a beautiful old-growth pine forest just over here. So if you go between the two white buildings, head down the path, and go left, you'll see one of the few old-growth stands of white pine left in Ontario, correct? I think that's correct. So it's kind of like a cathedral, very special. If you go right, you get down to the beach. If you want to go swimming or whatever. So, knowing, okay. So I was yesterday talking about knowing not as knowledge or information, but as awakened mind. So knowing, I could say that I know where the path to the forest is. I know where the path to the beach is. Skill, I know how to cut a piece of wood, or someone else can say I know how to make onion soup. So whatever have you, that's a different kind of a knowing, obviously very, very important. But this knowing is kind of, or memory or perception. I know that that's a car, or that's a tractor, or that's a hosta, or that's an echinacea, or something like that. So that's perception, historical knowledge. But this knowing is like before you perceive or comment on everything, anything, it's the silence of just knowing how things are. And so in that vein, I use many, many words myself. It might be presence. To me, that's the same thing, presence. Awakened consciousness. Luang tomatoes, it's like this. Buddha knowing Dharma, suchness. So there's many, many, many words, for me at least, I use language, that point to the same possibility in any given moment. And so in ordinary life, we have to spend a lot of our time dealing with the objective world of experience. So our attention through necessity, has to be out. I have a deadline at work that I have to complete this work, or I've got a bad ankle, like I have to go see the doctor, or wow, there's a really interesting film on Netflix, I'll watch that. So our attention is very much out into the objective world, which is sometimes skillful, sometimes unskillful. That's not the really point here. But I think in meditation or in the spiritual life, what we're doing is we're looking at awareness itself, which we don't tend to do. We just take it, like consciousness, you just take it for granted. But my sense of the contemplative life is kind of looking back, the mind knowing the mind, and then understanding awareness in a way which it becomes a refuge, and one begins to discover that it is the place of silence and the place of peace. Objects or objective experience can never be peaceful. They can in a limited way, right? They can in a limited way, so we can look out across the Ottawa River and get a sense of space, and that helps us. But then that peace that we know by looking across there, if we became blind, and heaven forbid that we don't, we could still know that space, even though we couldn't see across the Ottawa River. We could know that inner space and inner silence. So that's what I like to emphasize in my practice, and so I share that with you. And reflective teachings like this, they're not like doctrinal as such. If you find you disagree with me, it's very important that you neither disagree or disagree, but if you disagree, you think, well, that's not right, that you go back into your own fundamental understanding of truth and say, why do I think that's not right? My first teacher taught me that. It was very, very good instruction. So I'm not asking you to believe or disbelieve. It's like if there's something in your structure of of Dharma understanding, which gets challenged by an idea, okay, take it back to your fundamental structure and see why. Then you can disagree, but from some true understanding of why you disagree rather than, I don't think that's true. My mother didn't teach me that, or some cultural thing, or whatever. So that's just in the vein of reflective teachings as opposed to, say, dogmatic teachings, only this is true, nothing else is true. So there's kind of many ways to go. One of the perceptions which I find very, very helpful, very useful, is the perception of space or okay, like I can feel the sun on the back of my shirt. And I can feel heat, right? Now, I can be aware of that without comment. When I'm aware of that without comment, it's not even heat. It is and it isn't. And it is heat because biologically I need to know it's heat. But if I don't make a comment on it, I just know, oh, it's just this way. What I touch is the silence of the mind. Not through concentration. I'm not like concentrating on that feeling of heat. I'm just allowing the feeling of heat and then knowing it as suchness. And then I touch the silence of the mind. But if I listen to the sound of the air, HVAC, I guess, out there, now if I just listen to that without making a comment or definition, I get to the same silence. And then what I use within that, I say to myself, well, the sound of the HVAC has a spatial quality. It is out there, you might say. But actually, that perception of spatial quality and volume and definition of HVAC is all in awareness. It's in awareness. It's a perception. And then I feel the body. And I notice the body. And that's the same. It's a different sense door. One is sound, one is bodily feeling. But actually, it's also in awareness. Now, this isn't like some physics thing where I'm talking about universal whatevers. It's actually a very pragmatic perception, which I find very helpful. So then I'm emphasizing awareness. So then I go between the two. I listen to sound, touch the silence. This is in awareness. Maybe I notice the changing nature of that sound. And then I know that's changing. What's unchanging? Oh, that awareness, that knowing, that's unchanging. It's silent. I go back to the body. I feel the body. And then maybe I take something up in bodily sensation and I feel the breathing of the body. Okay? Now I'm practicing awareness with breathing. But I'm not concentrating on the breath. And this is kind of important in my own development, where I don't like the word concentration very much for meditation, because I'm more concerned about the awareness rather than the object of awareness. Not that concentration's wrong, this is just words, but I know I have erred on the side of trying to hold on to an object of meditation and prevent thought from coming into consciousness, which is a disaster, because thought comes and goes. Well, not a disaster, but frustrating. And so I prefer like sustained awake, like for Samma Samadhi, I prefer sustained awakeness as opposed to red concentration in terms of language and in terms of how it affects me, because language does affect me. So if I play around with that, I listen to sound. I have to come to silence. If I'm thinking about the sound, is that HVAC or not? I don't think he's wrong, Anyway, it's not really out there, it's over here. Well, then you're lost. So it's not a commentary. So that does take some doing just awakening to the way things are. But it's not like concentration, it's like remembering something. So I do that, I get a sense of what awareness is. This experience is in awareness. Then I might take the breath, and I might use the breath. I might even make deep breaths, do pranayama with awareness. So all the time I'm emphasizing the background. Now that doesn't mean that I can't make choices. I can choose, if my mind is worrying about something and it's not really emotionally strong, I can say, don't go there. But in full awakeness, not to get rid of it, not to get rid of that thought, because if I try to get rid of it, it'll just keep going. And so, I would say, in this sense of the awake mind includes everything, doesn't it? Everything couldn't exist if the awake mind wasn't there. So, in this sense, the awake mind is love. And now love is a difficult word because it can be sentimental, it can be romantic, it can be silly. We have this ball of fur called a dog now in the monastery, and it is the cutest thing. It's a Bernese mountain dog. I mean, everyone just falls in love with it. I'm not talking about that, but it is cute, and lovely dog. But so the word love is difficult, but in spiritual life you find that word, don't you, at the kind of higher level. And so awareness includes everything. How could it? You can't exclude, even though I might not want negative emotions, they're still there, right? And if it's an authentic awareness, it has to include everything, doesn't it? My judgments, my culture, my idealism, etc., might say, "Oh no, I'm a Buddhist monk. I've been at this for a long time. I shouldn't feel negative thoughts." But that's not reality. Reality is, I stub my toe and I blame the root, or whatever. And so, the sense to me that awareness is both space, conscious space, is a hard word actually, because that kind of solidifies it as an object. So language is difficult here, but as a perception that this experience is in awareness. All experience is in awareness. And then the sense of open acceptance of all things. From that, I can make good decisions. I can make decisions not to pursue that which is unskillful and harmful to me and others. I can pursue courses of thought and action which are to the benefit of myself and others. But if I don't awaken, then those courses of action might just be reactive or idealistic. But also, other than just the way I act in the world or think in the world, I can, if I start to emphasize awareness itself and get good at it, then I find the gateway to the unconditioned, what we call the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unborn, or nibbana. And that gateway is awareness itself, but not awareness of an object. So when we have difficult material to deal with, inner things, and we have the wisdom to say, well, this is in awareness, and then I use this. I've been using this. I told you, right? I use this language for the last year, and this will sound sentimental. Excuse me, but I love you. I have always loved you. I will always love you. Say that to the worst state of mind you have. Say that to the ugliest condition that comes up into your mind, to the most painful condition that comes into, I love you, I will always love you, I have always loved you. And see what happens. It's very powerful. It's very, very effective. I couldn't have said this 30 years ago. I'm 77 now, I can say things, I'm 76, I can say things like this. But actually, 30 years ago, you say, oh God, that old monk, he's lost the plot. He's not a forest monk anymore. He's not tough. But actually, what is metta bhavana? Is metta bhavana just like this list? Mom, Dad, and Bruno. Bruno's the name of the dog. Is that what it's about? Is that all? Or is it beyond the duality of self and other? Or is it about awareness being our real home, and that awareness is love, conjoined with love? So take that as you will, if it's useful. But where it's very, very useful is that a lot of our attention is judgmental, is critical. In some cases, that's necessary to have judgments and criticism. But in terms of our inner idealism, it can be very, it doesn't allow us to be peaceful. So if I understand those patterns of judgment and negation in my own conditioning, and then I recognize it, and I say to that very judgment, I love you, I've always loved you, I will always love you, then what happens? That whole sense of self, grounded in idealism and attachment to how I should be, that is held, in a larger way, and it's okay. Which doesn't mean that I go off and then murder people, because I'm already there. I don't need to do that bit. But in the inclusion of these things, the identity with these things falls away. And as the identity with these things falls away, they're not problematic. They're simply stuff that comes and goes. And the identity more and more is with this open awareness, this trusting awareness, this loving awareness, if you will, if you have. So I'll do a guided meditation now. You stretch your legs a bit if you want, and I'll just emphasize this in awareness, or not. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. Okay.